He grabs a rope, pulling it back and hoisting the sack into the air. The sounds of hissing, growling, and mews for help are coming out of the bag. Paws clawing at the net. All the while, the King of France walks towards the kindling. Torch in hand, he joyously lit the flame. The crowd gasps, and then begins to applaud. They start to feel it. They feel fires as hot as hell itself approaching. The cries grow louder and louder as the audience cheers on. They love it. Every second of it. The cats cry louder as they eventually turn to screams of agony, all of which would be drowned in thunderous applause and jovial laughter. It was right to burn them. Cat burning was common. They were the devil's creatures, friends of witches. It was said that the devil himself could transform into a black cat. Pope Innocent VIII said, "Cats are the devil's favorite animal, an idol of all witches." People celebrated murder. It was common to watch things die in the 1500s. They felt justified in their actions. These beings didn't have a soul. Not like they truly felt anything. Right? In the world they lived in, this could have been considered honorable. They were the devil's animals. But in this dark world of ours, torture and death weren't seen as cruel and unusual. It could have been considered entertainment. Lest you're some sadist, the idea of watching someone suffer doesn't sound like the most appealing pastime to you. Though this was common practice in medieval ages. Things such as the ducking stool, a seat in which a woman would usually be tied to and held over a lake, while they'd be repeatedly dropped into the water, even sometimes being held under for prolonged periods of time. One most of you are probably familiar with would be the pillory. These were tamer than others, though. If you were tried by any means in medieval times, you were lucky to get a sentence, like the ducking stool. Usually, any crime would mean execution. Even not confessing to a crime could lead to torture until you confessed. It was seen as a means to an end. Admitting guilt was all the same, right? Things such as being boiled in oil, sawed in half, and worse yet, caged in a prison, then covered in something sweet like honey, being left out for rats and insects to feast upon you, all the while being held in a cage that was just big enough that you couldn't move at all. It sounds like something out of a sick snuff film, but all of these were true means of execution, usually being done in front of townsfolk, while they gleefully watched the accused. Things such as beheadings were saved for noblemen, royalty, and knights. Thankfully, such savageries have been wiped away from our modern society. One means of execution from medieval ages persists, though, even being legal to this day in Delaware and Washington, and practiced across the world in various countries. The gallows. The last hanging in the United States would be to a murderer of the name Billy Bailey on January 25th, 1996 in the state of Delaware. Though not commonly used now, it's hard to ignore its place in history. People would gather around just to watch a criminal be hung. There was a step of orders, a long procession of the guilty, howling crowds, the climb to the gallows, final words, the final prayer, placement of the hood, the slam of the trapdoor, and a loud gasp from the audience. It was a dark theatric akin to an opera house of the age. Crowds upwards of 5,000 strong would regularly gather to watch. By the turn of the 20th century, though, many states would begin to outlaw its use, seeing the practice as ghoulish. They switched over to the more humanitarian option of the time, the electric chair. The last state to hold a public hanging, though, would be Kentucky, in the town of Owen Burroughs. Though, this time, people didn't just come to see a man be hung. By then, it was losing its appeal. They came to see a first in the country's history. They came to see a woman string a man. Florence Thompson was set to string a man by the name of Rainey Bethia. Sheriff Thompson was a mother of 4, widow, and soon-to-be executioner. She had inherited the role of sheriff after the death of her late husband. Rainey had confessed to the rape and murder of 70-year-old widow Lucia Edwards. News of the execution would become national, and soon reporters across the country would gather to her small town, just to witness Thompson become an executioner. Thompson, though, had no experience with executions, so she enlisted the help of a man by the name of George Philip Hanna to set up the rope and build the scaffold. Though Thompson wouldn't be the one to pull the lever sending Rainey to his death, a man by the name of Arthur L. Ashe would don the honors. Arthur had been in the army in the years of 1918 and 1919. He knew what it was like to kill, and he didn't want Thompson to know the same feeling. Thompson herself later stated, "I did not want people pointing out at my children and saying their mother was the one who hanged a Negro in Owensboro." Early morning, August 14th of 1936 came just like any other summer day in Kentucky. Morning dew on the trees, lukewarm air. But this morning there was something different. There would be crowds of people gathering around the scaffolding that would soon send Rainey Bethia down into eternity. People would perch upon the rooftops, climb on top of light posts just to get a better view of the event. Hannah arrived early to do last-minute checks on the equipment, and Arthur would arrive soon after, inebriated. After Rainey's last words to the priest, he was brought up to the marked X above the trapdoor, his head covered in a black hood, the noose tightened around his neck. Hannah nodded to Arthur to signal the drop, but Arthur, too drunk to notice anything, did nothing. He had to be yelled at to do it, all before a deputy would lean on the lever to release the door, sending Rainey 8 feet below into eternity. He broke his neck and was declared dead 14 minutes thereafter. Witnesses told of a silent crowd who stood and watched, though witnesses don't always get the point they deserve. Many times stories would be told in a false light, and a story about a woman executing a man was a costly endeavor. There were reporters sent from across the country, after all. There were false reports of the crowd rushing to the stage after Rainey's death, ripping off his hood, and taking pieces of his clothing as articles for souvenirs. People hissing at Rainey as he spoke to the priest. Owensboro would be the last public execution in the United States. Modern sensibilities have changed to realize that one's death shouldn't be seen by the eyes of the world. Death is better being a private affair, even to men such as Rainey. No one would wish to see a loved one hung up for a crowd of people to watch, even if they did commit grave atrocities. In this dark world of ours, public execution has luckily been left to a bygone time. Hey there, welcome to the end of the video. All the music besides the Over the Garden Wall theme could be accredited to the talented Mayuji. You can find a link to his SoundCloud down below, as well as a link to the video of the Over the Garden Wall theme that was used in this video. Please feel free to like, subscribe, comment, whatever you wish to do. I'm still fairly new to this, so any criticism and support is really appreciated. I'll see you guys again soon.